In my lifetime, I've learned hard work pays off. Dreams come true. Bad times don't last, but bad guys do.
Tonight, we pay homage to the man who had unbridled passion, brought us immense joy, and who was a mentor to so many of us. Please join us in a moment of silence, followed by the traditional 10-bell salute.
And now, Pro Wrestling and Being a Good Brother present the Brothers in Kayfabe. And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to the Brothers in Kayfabe podcast. A somber night, but we will celebrate. We shall celebrate a man that had touched all of our lives tonight. It's just kind of hard to believe that he's gone, but before we get really into it, I am El Gigante, one of your aforementioned brothers in Kayfabe. To my right in the StreamYard studio is
Mr. Wrestling, Landon Bumgarner. Jake, it is heavy that we are doing this broadcast, but it's important that we do this broadcast because most of you already know we did lose a very important figure in the world of professional wrestling this week. So this episode is a special episode dedicated to the celebration of the life of Scott Hall.
Yes, it is. And, you know, it's hard not to get choked up talking about the guy because he's one of those people that you rooted for the whole time. And, you know, yeah, he was the bad guy and he played the heel almost his entire career. But, you know, he was finally in a place where he could be the best version of himself. He had, you know, overcome a lot of demons, you know, thanks to good friends of his and rehab and everything. But this is just not the way you wanted to see him go out. He deserved more than this. And, you know, everyone that knows we're talking about Scott Hall. But, you know, he deserved to go out better than this. And to see, you know, a simple surgery. I mean, not simple. Hip surgery is a very important surgery and crazy surgery, but like to see him go out because of this, it's I don't like it. I don't know what else to really say about that part of it. Landon, what do you think?
Yeah, it's unfortunate that all the hard work he put into getting sober and staying sober, and literally, for years and years, people called him the real life Randy the Ram. You know, he's gonna his legacy had been tarnished because of what a sloppy drunk he was. Even like Jake the Snake, no one would be surprised to wake up to the news that Scott Hall was dead. We were just waiting for it. And then 2013, 2014 makes a radical change in his life, gets in better shape, gets clean, stays clean. Um, and so it's just frustrating that, a man who overcame so much would go out like this. And it's unfortunate that it transpired the way that it did, and he had the complications, and you know um it's heartbreaking because we don't know to a degree how much suffering he endured leading up to his passing. um but we know he's better now.
He is
He's not hurting anymore.
he is better. He's absolutely not hurting anymore, but it's hard whenever your heroes pass away, and that's what Scott was to a lot of people. And he wasn't my favorite wrestler of all time, but the guy was incredible at what he did. He oozed charisma. I mean, it's just I had different plans for tonight. I was going to come on tonight anyway, it being 316 day, and it's the stone cold day and all that, but it's just you never think that you never think that these people will die, that they're immortal to you.
Hmm.
It's gonna be a sad day when a lot of our heroes pass, and that's what Razor is. He was a hero to a lot of people, and I think fully in this, yes, we will mourn one of our heroes, but we also celebrate this person. We'll celebrate this man who overcame huge odds. I can remember in 2012, 2013, he was a joke. It
Hmm.
was Scott Hall the drunk, Scott Hall the druggie. He had major problems, and he had had major problems his entire life. But, a lot of people had gone, well, this is a guy that's never going to get out of that, and wrote him off. And I mean, I'm not saying that I didn't think the same thing at some point, but, it's just sad to think about it that way. But the man overcame all of his demons, and it's the kind of person that you wanted to see that happen to.
Hmm.
So, as we celebrate this man, I'm going to try to get some people on. I'm messaging people. I know that this was kind of a quick turnaround for us to
Yeah.
do this. You don't always get uh, a lot of people. I mean, we decided to do this yesterday afternoon.
Yeah.
Um
Less than 24 hours after.
and we would have spoke about it on the regular pod uh Sunday night, but we didn't know. We didn't know what was going on. And at that point, we record on Sunday nights. At that point, he was in the hospital on life support, and it was still a thing that was, being decided. We didn't know what was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
You see people come out of that situation, but it sounds like he was too far gone at that point.
And that's the heartbreaking thing is it seemed to happen so quickly to where, everyone woke up Sunday morning saying to news that, hey, Scott Hall suffered 3 heart attacks. He's on life support. And it's like, whoa, like this literally came out of nowhere.
Right.
And then by Sunday night, you get the news that, hey, his family's going to take him off life support Monday morning. And they take him off, and for about 6 hours, he lives after being taken off life support. I think that's a testament to what a fighter Scott Hall was. And it was just a hard and heavy day Monday. Just, we're just waiting for different news. And eventually we got that news that evening. I'm glad it did happen on Monday for the sake that WWE was able to recognize him on Raw.
And he deserved to be.
Yeah. I mean, he deserves to be recognized on, I would say, on every promotion show this week.
I mean, obviously we're not watching AEW live right now, but I mean, I would 100% be shocked if they didn't say something about him right at the beginning of the show.
Right.
He's a pioneer.
He was. When you close your eyes and you think about a stereotypical pro wrestler like Scott Hall is that. I think the only thing that could make him more stereotypical is if he had bleached hair.
Right.
But you think
Right.
of this larger than life, like this rugged, handsome, like, what, 6'6", 6'7", 290, huge muscle guy, gets any girl he wants. Guys are terrified of him.
Good food, good chicas.
And it's like he, like he was successful in everything he did, and it's because that natural charisma he has. Like, looking back on it, there were train wrecks. He used to have a YouTube series in the mid 2000s called Last Call with Scott Hall. And I mean, looking back on them, they're train wrecks because there's like videos of like he filmed himself in court wearing like an NWO jersey while he's there on domestic charges and stuff like that. But I remember, like, even though the content was, sad, I was so drawn to those videos as they were being published because of how charismatic he was.
Right.
To where there's a scene I remember he's talking about how he's going to sell his dolls on his website and he's got some used gear and he's like, maybe for some of you freaks out there, if I can still fit in them, I'll put the trunks on, jog on the treadmill a little bit, then autograph them and send them to you. And it's just like, normally I wouldn't want to hear anyone say that, but there's just something so charismatic
There we are.
about him.
And that's the truth. He was machismo. Like, you look up the definition of macho and charisma, and there's a picture of Scott Hall, Razor Ramon.
Absolutely.
There was someone talking about modern day gimmicks and things like I think the first person that came up was Pete Dunne, who just got repackaged as Butch. And a big thing was, do you think back then Razor would have thought the same thing about Butch, as Razor Ramon?
Yeah.
All it is it's just a modern day, adaptation of these kind of characters. And I'm sure, he had his hesitations as well. But the superstars take what's given to them and make it work.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what Scott Hall did.
And he's talked about, is him and Vince were talking about the character. Scarface had just come out, and he, Scott Hall sees it, and he starts just pitching character traits of Al Pacino and Scarface. And Vince is like, this is incredible. Like, how are you coming up with all this? And he says something about Scarface, and Vince is like, never heard of it. Like, what are you talking about? And then Razor's like, oh, it's it's something I came up with. And that goes to show you, and there's so many factors that play into this, but I mean, Razor, the gimmicks that are most successful, it's not because the gimmick idea is necessarily good. It's because the person portraying that character is so believable.
Right.
I mean, you look at The Undertaker, there's a lot of people you could give that gimmick to, but not everyone's going to be able to make it as believable
Exactly.
as the guy who plays Undertaker. Sure, you can find any kind of bigger guy and put him in a trench coat and have him work the indie show as a supernatural guy, and it's like it's not as believable. And I think you see that with other gimmicks today. People are in an uproar because Pete Dunne is Butch now, and it's like, hey, if he takes Butch and makes money with it, awesome.
Right.
If Butch is horrible, it's one thing if Butch never is given TV time, is never given the opportunity to succeed, but if they give him all the time and his character falls flat, then it's not on the character, it's on the performance of it. But all that to say, like, Scott Hall, you could really have him do anything and he would have been entertaining with it.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, just look at some of the stuff he did in WCW. He was just being himself, and kind of a natural extension of Razor was himself, just that cool guy.
Yeah.
And a lot of what he put into those characters was how he saw himself. And a talent can take a bad gimmick and make it great.
Oh, absolutely.
Razor Ramon had every inkling of being a bad gimmick, but the man it was given to, the man that used it, elevated the gimmick. And it's just kind of the other man that today is about. Under anybody else at that time, Stone Cold, that character wouldn't have reached the heights it did.
Yeah.
Let's say, Billy Gunn was in the runs for it. Not saying Billy Gunn is not a great talent, but, they probably would have been like, yes, sir, Fang McFrost, that's great. Let's do it.
Yeah.
And never gave it that extra level of like, well, we got to make this a natural extension of me. And Fang McFrost is not it, pal,
Yeah.
So
I think, Scott Hall is a testament of a dying breed of great in-ring worker. Like, the signs of a great in-ring worker aren't necessarily their work rate, but how they do the basics. Like, how do you sell a punch? How do you throw a punch? How do you sell being whipped into the corner and stuff like that? But having that ability combined with entertainment and a gimmick and a larger than life personality, like, that's, like you said it right, Jake, you can't just put other people who are talented into that role because they may not be able to deliver on it. I mean, this is no dig on anybody, but imagine if you gave, Cody Rhodes the Macho Man gimmick, or, if you give, CM Punk the Hulk Hogan gimmick or stuff like that. It's not that they're not good at what they do, but they're not the right person for that role.
Right.
you know.
So, he's in WWF in 92, and that's whenever Razor Ramon kind of comes around. You know, you think of some of the guys that are there. Uh, I let's just say a Rick Martel.
Mm-hmm.
Rick Martel is great, and he does his job perfectly, and he knew his character, but like, I don't think that guy makes Razor Ramon get over.
Right.
I don't think Shawn Michaels makes Razor Ramon get over. It's all about it being a natural extension of himself, and that's what Razor was. He was a natural extension of Scott Hall with a lot of flair and, you know, pieces of another character thrown in, but he also believed in the character.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's really the problem. And I'm not saying that this is something that actually happened, but we can look at it like Keith Lee with the Bearcat gimmick that they gave him. Now, do we know exactly what that gimmick was? No, because it never materialized fast enough. But, it was obvious from the get-go that he didn't believe in the gimmick that he was in.
Right.
And so that was never going to get over. The same can go for the rebrand of Karrion Kross, and we know that Karrion Kross didn't believe in the main roster character.
Mm-hmm.
So it was never going to get over.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big problem nowadays is a lot of these guys have pigeonholed themselves to not trying out new ideas. I think that's why the Young Bucks work so well is they have continued to adapt their in-ring talent to a character. They're a completely different character right now than they were when they first came into to the AEW arena. So, Scott Hall went through a long time of not getting over. I mean, he was over in AWA. When he was kind of the cowboy gimmick, but like, he was never going to get over like that.
Right.
And I think a part of him knew that. So, let's talk a little bit about the man himself. I love the Razor character. It was a great character. It was very fleshed out, and you saw every version of that character that it could be. But he will always be Scott Hall. He will always be the bad guy, Scott Hall. Like NWO, that was him for me. I don't know about you. I know you've got your Razor guy right there, but the Scott Hall character, without Scott Hall jumping ship to WCW, it's another one of those points in wrestling time that it changes things.
Yeah.
Forever.
I mean, we even talk about the logistics of, the reason Hall and Nash jumped ship is because Turner was willing to give them guaranteed money. To whereas at the time, still in '96, WWF, you don't get a base guarantee.
Right.
You are paid strictly off of how you draw. Now you could argue that, you get bigger stars that way because it's like, hey, like, okay, if you're as good as you say you are and worth as much as you are, then your ticket sales should reflect that. But they change the business as a whole because everyone heard, hey, we're getting guaranteed money over here. So they jump ship. Well, now WWE has to guarantee money.
Yeah.
And that's why, not everyone who's signed to AEW or WWE is, living a luxurious lifestyle, but they paved the way for people to actually make a living. There's a basis. It's not like, well, hey, you can make anywhere from 10,000 to, 100 grand. There's guys that are signed to WWE that, make 40,000 a year. And that's okay because that's still a living. They might not have a big house and they may not have the, $1,000 shirts and stuff like that, but
Right.
you don't get any of that without Scott Hall.
No, you don't. Scott Hall and Kevin Nash changed the business for the better and for the worse. For the better, they all got guaranteed contracts. For the worse, they all got the book.
Yeah.
That's one thing that, I never really liked about them, but like I loved the NWO, and the NWO changed the business. And without a guy like Scott Hall, you know who I am, but you don't know why I'm here. Like, you believed that he was there to invade.
Yeah.
You would believed Vince McMahon sent him because that's what they wanted everybody to believe. And he was just that good. He was that good at making you believe. Listeners, comment what you love about Stone Cold. Let's talk about it. Or Stone Cold, Razor Ramon.
It is 316
It
day.
is 316. If you want to talk about Stone Cold, we can. But we're kind of in memoriam of Razor tonight. But like, let's talk about it. We can get you on if you want to actually speak, or we can put your comment up and we can just talk about it. But Landon, what would you say is your favorite version of Scott Hall?
So that's super tough. I think, gun to my head, it's probably Razor. But like, what made Scott Hall and Razor so successful is it was the same person.
Right.
Because, like, if we're being honest, really all that changed whenever Scott Hall becomes Scott Hall is he drops the accent eventually.
Eventually.
And it's like that.
And the gear.
Yeah. And that makes such a huge difference because it's not like, here's Surfer Sting and here's Crow Sting. Or, here's, Doink the Clown and then here's Matt Bourne wrestling in the territories. It's not this super crazy difference. It's like, oh no, they're the same person. There's just a couple of different character traits that are accentuated.
Right.
But man, like there's like I'm getting giddy just thinking about like watching some Razor matches because there are, you know, Razor and Kevin Nash do not get enough credit for how generous they were with other guys. Like you think about this, think about the landscape of WWE in the 90s. Is it a place for cruiserweights?
No.
Absolutely not. You have 1-2-3 Kid, and yeah, they could have written it in to the plans for hey, we're gonna give him a chance and we're gonna push him a little bit. But if it was not for Scott Hall's performance and his selling of the character of 1-2-3 Kid, you wouldn't have 1-2-3 Kid. You wouldn't have X-Pac.
Yeah.
You could argue and say you cruiserweights never get another chance in WWF because the one time they trusted a guy, he flopped. And just I think that speaks volumes of how generous Razor was, how generous Scott Hall was, but how smart he was that he's like, hey, we could make a star with this right now. And the nice thing about making new stars is that's more money.
Yeah.
And look what happens. They made money.
Well, arguably without that, you never get a Rey Mysterio. And Rey Mysterio is one of the greatest of all time. And, it's that point where these guys helped these cruiserweights get over in WCW. And now we have wrestling for all. It's not a big man territory anymore. It's everyone has a place in wrestling because of what they were doing there in WCW in the mid to late 90s. And I know this is not a WCW discussion, but I mean, that's where we're at.
Yeah. It showed you that, hey, you can add more depth, more variety to your roster, not to necessarily be inclusive, but to stretch your income.
Right.
You know, I think of it like, you know, McDonald's. When they first started, you could just get burgers, you could get fries, and you could get a shake.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. And then they're like, well, you know, if we add, you know, more soda options, hey, you know, if we introduce chicken, like that opens up a whole new world of revenue that doesn't diminish the quality of what we do. It just adds more opportunity. And I think it's guys like Scott Hall who made that a viable thing. Now, this just popped in my head, so I'm going to share it before I forget. I think I'm going to check YouTube and see if it's still there. But there used to be a video um of Scott Hall and I think Kevin Nash, but definitely Scott Hall, and he watches Shawn Michaels versus Hulk Hogan at SummerSlam 2005. And that's one of, like, it's very easy to watch wrestlers give their take on, you know, popular moments and popular matches. But man, having one of Sean's real life best friends comment, and he's like, oh, yeah, like, this is the side of Sean that we don't talk about anymore, or stuff like
Right.
that. And but also being friends with Hulk, and it's like, ooh, like if it was anybody else but Sean, they would have been kicked out of the locker room for the way they treated Hogan in that match.
Yeah.
And just stuff like that. I super random, just popped in my head, but it's like Scott Hall had such a great mind for the business. Jake, we were reading it the other day. AIW in Wisconsin, I believe, they shared about how they booked Scott Hall for a show and he had people riding with him all weekend.
Yeah.
But Scott Hall paid for the gas and he paid for all the meals and for his room and stuff because he, in his own words, he was taught that you take care of the guys that are going to come up after you and you pass it along and you pay it forward.
Exactly.
You don't get that with a lot of older wrestlers.
No, and you know, this was shortly after the period of time where you basically kiss the ass of the older wrestlers. And to know that he was that way, it's astounding to think about.
Yeah. I mean, and you still see it today, veterans that are so bitter and upset because they think younger guys, modern guys have it better than them. You know, I can't tell you how many legends I've seen complain about how they got screwed over on paydays back in the day compared to guys getting, you know, making bukus of money. And it's like, well, back then you got paid by how you drew. If you
Right.
didn't draw, if no one wanted to see you, you weren't getting paid. But then you also, like, there's something wonderful called inflation. And so it's like, you know, just because somebody's getting paid, you know, 200 grand today doesn't mean it's as much as 200 grand was for you 40 years ago.
Right.
But all that to say, it's rare to find a veteran and a legend like that. Now there's also a video of Scott Hall on that YouTube channel. One thing that caught my mind was he went to a wrestling school. I'm not sure what wrestling school, and just sat in on a practice and critiqued guys. And there's somebody, he does a German suplex, does it pretty sloppy. And Scott Hall stops everyone. He's like, don't you ever do that move again. And goes on a rant about how, like, it doesn't matter how good you can do anything. It doesn't matter how much money you make. At the end of the day, your main priority and job is to take care of the person in that ring because they're trusting you with their life and their livelihood. And it's like, so it doesn't matter if you like them. It doesn't matter if you hate them. Doesn't matter if they don't have name value. Doesn't matter if that's the biggest star in the company. It's your job, no matter how you feel, to take care of that person and that trust because that's what you do in the ring. And it's just like, what a, like, I wish Scott Hall had a podcast
Right.
just so we could just get hours of him just spewing wisdom.
You know what I would have loved is
What's that?
Scott Hall and two people. It could have been an either or situation. Number one, Scott Hall and Kevin Nash just doing a podcast together because I think it would be money.
Oh,
But
easy.
But number two, how great would Scott Hall and Diamond Dallas Page doing a podcast be?
Hey, Dally. It'd be
Hey, Dally.
perfect. Like, some of the best parts of the Jake the Snake documentary are just Scott Hall's parts in it.
Right.
Shout out, rest in peace, Triple J, Jimmy Jam Jackson, who I think he paid $30 for it, which is mind blowing. But off of DDP's website, he bought a signed The Resurrection of Jake the Snake poster signed by Scott Hall, by Jake the Snake, and DDP. And it's like, just what a cool thing. Because here's the morbid side. Like, you can't get a Scott Hall autograph ever again.
Right.
It's too late to take a picture with him. It's too late to meet him and ask him questions and things like that. But because of the beauty of technology and especially physical media, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, we have we have everything he's ever done.
Right.
And that's the one, I think that's the.
Well, I mean, as I'm talking right now, I'm watching Razor versus Shawn WrestleMania 10.
Which there were several wrestlers who went through NXT sharing the last couple of days that some of the most impactful moments of their career was, while Shawn was a coach in NXT, other guest people would come by. Scott Hall came by and Johnny Gargano asked, "Hey, can we watch back y'all's ladder match and hear your take?" And they got to do that. Like, imagine how great it is to be able to pick the brain of somebody like that.
Right.
Or to have him critique your work, because like Scott Hall is one of those people that, yes, he never won the world title. He was never the guy. Guess what? You never thought that when you were watching him. It was, it's not like today where people just sit and complain about, man, they really need to be pushing Scott Hall.
Right.
Like, Scott Hall needs to leave WWE and go to AEW so he can do this. Or like AEW needs to release Scott Hall because he's, no one's going to watch him on YouTube. It's like, no, like Scott Hall was good enough. He rose to the top and he was unique enough that he always had a spot on the card because there wasn't anyone who could do all that he could do.
He is the type of guy that Bruce Pritchard would say didn't need the title.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He was, he was that in that same league with Roddy Piper and those guys that they didn't need the title to be one of the top stars. And I mean, I'm looking at him right now on TV, which also, Mattel, give us an ultimate of this version of Razor, please. Like,
right.
How great would that be with the orange ladder, like the red ladder, whatever color it is, the gold chains, everything. It's perfect. It's black so they can do some more stuff.
Yeah.
But he looks like an action figure come to life. Like, if a person sat down and was like, draw a pro wrestler, like you said earlier, beyond maybe the bleach blonde hair, this is the guy. He looks chiseled from stone. He's so tall. I mean, we're talking about a guy that stood face to face with guys like Kevin Nash and Hogan, who are huge. And he was 6'7", 287. It's just, I'm starting to like tear up thinking about, you know, he was one of those guys that caught me whenever I was young.
Yeah.
The reasons why I stayed up late and watched the replays, like when I would be able to catch WCW, he was one of the reasons. The NWO, without him, I might not catch wrestling like I do.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's
And
like he was cut from a different cloth. And that shows because you don't necessarily, I don't think you necessarily have you don't have people in that role as good as Scott Hall was. And what I mean by that is like you stick him literally in any company and it doesn't matter what creative has for him. Like there's no way they won't get over and be a star. Because here's the truth, like even at his worst, the tail end of WCW and in 2002 WWE, even in TNA, in New Japan, like he was still great. Like because of his actions on the plane ride from hell, you know, he was released from WWE. Because at that time they said, you know, his demons are just too bad. We can't have that. You have literally the greatest Stone Cold Stunner sell of all time just days before at WrestleMania 18.
yeah,
Like, The Rock sold the Stunner incredibly. Triple H sold the Stunner. No one sold it better than Scott Hall because the sheer amount of air that 6'7", 290-pound guy got. And, you know, even his stuff in TNA, like, years down. Like, I remember him showing back up in TNA in, like, 2010. And, sure, he wasn't what he used to be, but he got on the mic, and he was still just as good.
yeah.
You know, he did what he could do, and it was still great. It wasn't like, oh, this is embarrassing. He needs to just stop. Now, there was a lot of that outside of the ring, but it's just I'm going to say this. The 3 deaths in professional wrestling that have hit me harder than any other are Roddy Piper, Mean Gene, and Scott Hall. With all 3 of those, it was like, you know, there haven't been a lot of celebrity deaths that affect me. Like, yes, it's sad, but it's, you know, I don't have any, you know, connection to them. I never met them. I just watched them on TV. But for those 3, like for Roddy Piper, like I was in my freshman year of college and I just remember laying in my apartment bedroom because I couldn't believe the news.
Yeah.
And then for Mean Gene, I was on a ski trip in Colorado and I woke up and that was the first thing I saw. And I laid in bed for about 3 hours that morning
Yeah.
because I just could not wrap my mind around it. Very similar to finding out the news about Scott Hall this week. And it's just gut wrenching because it's like, you almost want to say, like, can it be anybody but him?
Yeah.
And it's heartbreaking. It's devastating. But the beauty is, even though, you know, Scott Hall is no longer in this life, his work is large enough that it's not going to be forgotten.
No, and
You know, he
he's a
left his
legend.
place in history.
He's a legend, and I know that term is thrown around kind of loosely when it comes to wrestling. But like he's the epitome of it. And he's just that guy. He I'm right there with you with Roddy Piper and Mean Gene. It was different. And when I heard the news that he was sick this weekend, I don't pray for celebrities a lot, but I prayed. I was like, please not, because this guy deserves to go out like a hero. And he has overcome those demons. He was a deeply flawed person, and he overcame his demons and changed his life. And I would add, I felt the same about Roddy, because just it was unexpected. Mean Gene, yeah, I felt the same, but not probably to the extent of you. But the other one was Macho Man. And Macho Man was part of my catalyst into watching old wrestling over again. And so when he had passed, it was big for me. And Scott is the same way, and it's going to be the same whenever we see guys like you know I'm not as big of a fan as of Hulk Hogan, but it's going to be like that. I've put this into perspective a lot, me being a racing fan. The day Richard Petty passes away is going to be a very sad day, because they are these people that are larger than life. And it's like the day that Dale Earnhardt passed away. Even people who were not NASCAR fans mourned. And that's just how I feel about Scott Hall. I found out about so many people that I didn't even know were wrestling fans this week because of Scott Hall. So, I'm at a loss of words for that. And I don't, that's not a good thing to have whenever you're doing a podcast, especially live. But it's just, we must celebrate this man. We must celebrate him through his work, through the fact that he did get sober, and that hopefully he had faced all of his demons head on before he passed. And I believe he did. And God bless that Diamond Dallas Page, because I don't think him being as close with Scott, I don't think he would have faced those demons. I mean, I remember those videos of Scott at indie promotions and not even being able to walk to the ring. At the beginning of his portion of that episode of that movie, he can't walk at all.
Yeah.
But
he shows up in a wheelchair.
But he had friends that cared about him enough to be like, dude, what the hell are you doing? So God bless his friends like, Nash and Page and all of them for going, dude, let's make a change. So, that's really what, at the end of the day, all I've got to say about it. I'm celebrating him tonight.
I think I think as we get ready to go home, because of who he is, I think we do this, Jake. Let's share our favorite Razor Ramon match and our favorite Scott Hall match. How's that?
Sounds great.
Because I think he is, I think he deserves it. Because it'll be a little lighter note. It's not going to be as depressing. But you know, he's a one of a kind guy, and his life is absolutely worth celebrating. You know, if you were ever going to do the brothers' homework, this is the week to go and do that. You know,
Yeah.
if you haven't watched Razor Ramon matches, watch them. They're, whether you're an old fan or a new fan, they are great. I think of Razor kind of in terms of Bret Hart, and that everything he does looks good.
Yeah.
And
It
for
was
me, that,
very believable.
yeah, and that's such a huge thing. Like the way he sells stuff looks incredible. The way he throws his punches and his kicks look incredible. The way he does his moves. I mean, one of the best things is in his, you know, the infamous match with the 1-2-3 Kid, where the 1-2-3 Kid pins him. You know, as soon as the ref counts 3, he kicks out. And like, as the 1-2-3 Kid is raising his hands up, celebrating, like he's already on his feet chasing you. Because why wouldn't you do that? If someone just screwed you over, why would you not chase them down?
Right.
And that's just a little thing. You know, he could have stood there and thrown a fit. It just makes so much sense. And we watched the video this week. It's an incredible video of an episode of Nitro. NWO's in the ring. Scott Hall's on the mic, and right as he says it's too sweet for life, a fan throws a beer at him. Does not blink, does not flinch. The clear beer cup hits him in the head. Beer splashes all over. And what does he do? He raises his hands up, slicks his hair back, and just keeps his eyes dead on the camera.
Yeah.
Like, you don't, like, I can't even think about, like, how are you that cool and calculated that you can do something like that? It's mind blowing. Like, we could go on and on about moments in his career. Like, watch as much as you can. You know, if you don't have Peacock, sign up for a free trial and watch all the matches you can. Get on YouTube, watch his AWA stuff. You know, watch his territory stuff as well.
I think with our homework today, we got to take one out of contention.
Okay.
Because it's probably the most famous match he was ever involved in, and that was the Bash at the Beach versus Sting, Luger, and Savage. I mean,
I think that's fair.
That's probably his highest profile match as Scott Hall. So I'm just going to put that out there. I'm going to give my Scott Hall pick first.
Okay. I'll do mine too.
And it's because it's a highly enjoyable match. It's not because it's the best match. So that is Sold Out 1999 versus Goldberg in a stun gun match. It's pro wrestling. Like, it's just the epitome of pro wrestling. Go watch it. It's not a good match. I mean, it's not the best match ever. But Scott Hall is so entertaining that he makes it work. So that's what I'm going to go with. It's January 1999. It was right after the Outsiders had caused Goldberg to drop the title with the stun gun. So that's why it gets set up that way. So go watch that and get back to me on entertainment on that.
I love that. So I'm going to give an honorary mention. That would be Scott Hall's match in ECW. I think is really his only real match, which was November 2000. But the match I'm going with, and it should be to no surprise, is Scott Hall versus Jeff Jarrett from the second ever TNA NWA pay-per-view in 2004, I believe. And it's for the number one contendership. At the time, Ken Shamrock is NWA champion. And Jake, here's the most TNA thing you're ever going to hear, okay?
It looks like what you're talking about is October 23rd, 2002.
2002. So Scott Hall versus Jeff Jarrett, NWA TNA Asylum pay-per-view number 2, number 1 contendership for the NWA championship. And who is the special guest enforcer at ringside? Toby Keith. Like, it's like, that's just such a good match. Like, Scott Hall, goes to TNA immediately after being released from WWE. But the fact that he's back there in 04, that he's back there in 08, the fact he's back there in 2010. And I've said it before, like, Scott Hall's TNA theme, Chef's Kiss, is incredible. It's cheesy, but like, it's not generic butt rock like every CFO's, wrestling theme song nowadays. Like, it's like, why would Scott Hall not have an arrogant theme song? It's incredible. If you haven't listened to it, listen to it. But yeah, Jeff Jarrett versus Scott Hall, NWA TNA Asylum pay-per-view number 2.
My Razor Ramon match. If you have never seen this match as a wrestling fan, you better watch it right now. Like, the epitome of ladder match, the greatest, possibly the greatest normal ladder match of all time. WrestleMania 10, Shawn versus Razor for both Intercontinental Championships. Two of the greatest to ever step in the ring. Two of the absolute greatest to ever step in the ring. In one match, in a ladder match. It's incredible. It's there's no words other than pioneering.
And spot freaks might watch it and be like, there's no Canadian destroyer off the top of the ladder. They jump off the ladder and dive on everyone at ringside. But it's like, I'll say that it's one of the most believable ladder matches ever.
Yeah.
Like, there's none of that. Okay, we got to, it's going to take us 45 minutes to climb to the top of the ladder because we're selling our injuries. It's what you would expect if two guys were fighting and you just gave them a ladder.
Exactly.
They're not going to do some crazy choreographed stuff. It's like, oh, I'm just going to throw this on top of them, or I'm going to swing this on top of them.
Especially whenever you get rid of Diesel early on in the match, because Diesel was there with Shawn at ringside, and he gets thrown out early. Wanted to shout out Mark Maggard. Thanks to you for joining us and commenting, Mark. We're about to go home here, but it's the mid 90s to a T in wrestling. It's a great match, two great workers who know how to sell, that know how to make a believable match. It doesn't turn out into a spot fest. And I love it. I love this whole pay-per-view is a great pay-per-view irregardless. But that's the that's all I got to really say about that one. It's a must watch if you have never watched this match.
Easily, it's my personal favorite ladder match. My Razor Ramon match I'm going to go with is actually one of his last in WWF, and that is Razor Ramon versus Goldust for the IC title on Raw, February 19th, 1996. And just that angle, because Goldust is just coming on the scene. He's a very bizarre character. The natural Dustin Rhodes fell flat. But Goldust, you know, for what he was at the time, was very controversial. And,
Yeah.
you know, you have ultimately the most, you know, straight-laced macho guy of all time, like stereotypical macho man, no pun intended, of Scott Hall. And then you have the ambiguous Goldust. And I remember the way they set up the match is, you know, Goldust gets behind Scott Hall in a waistlock and just starts slowly feeling up Scott Hall. And Scott Hall's like, this isn't supposed to happen during a wrestling match. What's going on? And just their chemistry. And once again, you know, that's a silly thing to communicate in the ring. But you believed Scott Hall, you believed Razor Ramon when he was selling that silliness. It wasn't like, you know, oh, like, hey, we're in on the joke too. It's like, no, like, that's a genuine reaction some people would have. That's a genuine response. And it's just so good. But that's Scott Hall, aka Razor Ramon, versus Goldust for the Intercontinental Championship on the February 19th edition of Raw in 1996.
I really thought you were going to say Razor versus 1-2-3.
It's one of those, but it's like, honestly, if you haven't seen that match, you can't say you're a fan of wrestling just because
Right.
of what it meant. Because, like we talked about at the top of the show, you know, you don't have cruiserweights without that match. You
Yeah.
don't have smaller guys getting the opportunity. Because how many guys grew up watching Sean Waltman and we're like, oh, like, I could be that. I could be 1-2-3 Kid. I could do, you know, crazy kicks, and I could do, you know,
Absolutely.
moonsaults and stuff like that. I mean, he paved the way for it. He doesn't get that spotlight without Scott Hall. And, you know,
Absolutely.
similar with Goldust, you know, Goldust doesn't step up to the point that he's wrestling Roddy Piper at WrestleMania without the help of someone like Scott Hall selling that character.
Right. Yeah, man. It was a great feud and it was a great match. And I know that it was kind of one of Scott's catalysts out of the company, but uh, it stood the test of time. That's for sure. But, you know, we, once again, you know, as we take this one home, we'll be given a very special Too Sweet from the man who really put it over. Just want to, you know, wish well wishes on his family, his friends. I know this is a very tough time for a lot of those in wrestling, and I I've been fighting back tears this whole time, and it's, you know, I'm not, like I said, I don't cry about celebrities and stuff, but this is tough, man. This is tough.
Yeah. And if you are watching, stay tuned. We did play a little tribute video at the beginning, and that's how we'll be closing out the show as well. But yeah, Jake, I mean, how appropriate for us to give a Too Sweet than none other than one of the men who pioneered it in the flick of a toothpick. So that being said, I mean, for Scott Hall, for Razor Ramon, for one of the OG Good Brothers, rest in peace, because what you left us was just too
Sweet for life.
In my lifetime, I've learned hard work pays off. Dreams come true. Bad times don't last, but bad guys do.
Tonight, we pay homage to the man who had unbridled passion, brought us immense joy, and who was a mentor to so many of us. Please join us in a moment of silence, followed by the traditional 10-bell salute.